Well, when I was younger I used to see a lot of weird shit in my house. The earliest I remember happened in 2001 when I was 5. Laying in bed, surrounded by my various stuffed animals. Had my night light on because I was afraid of the dark. I fucking loved these things, treated them like my friends. Told them secrets and whatnot, stupid little kid shit. There was one that was my favorite, a yellow stuffed rabbit I got one Easter. Don't know why I loved it so much, just seemed like it actually listened. Anyway, while I was in bed I was talking to the yellow rabbit. Told it about how my parents were fighting that day. Told it I wished they could be friends like we were. I just stared at it smiling for a while. Then it winked. It fucking winked. I promptly threw it across my room and screamed for my dad. My dad came into my room and turned on the light. Sat on the bed and stared at me with a blank expression. Told him about the rabbit, and how it scared me. He just stared. And stared. Until he finally said,
"I thought we were friends, Anon."
Wink. That's when I heard my dad, my real dad, coming down the hallways yelling about how my light was on in the middle of the night. I tried to tell him about my rabbit, but he was just pissed about my light being on. He turned off my lights, and shut my door. My night light had burned out and I was alone in the dark. That was the first, but not the last of the weird shit that went due. I guess I'll tell you more. The next big thing didn't happen to me for a few years. But between then and the first time, my older sister said she kept seeing a man with a big head in and around our house. My dad kept seeing something in my backyard but didn't like talking about it. One night heard my mom trying to ask him about it, really picking at him, you know. My dad was a veteran, so he didn't like to admit he was scared. But my mom knew he was, and wanted to know why. He kept trying to shrug her off, but she persisted. Then he suddenly screamed at her.
"Stop asking me about the big-headed fuck."
I could hear a soft sobbing and muffled gasps repeating.
"Fucking deer head, Tracy, it had a fucking deer head."
That was the first time I heard my dad cry. We never asked him about it afterward. He yelled at my sister for saying she saw the big-headed man outside their room one night. She stopped telling my parents after that. But she would still tell me about him. How he would come to see her at night. Sometimes he would just stand at her bedside, other times he would tell her things. I asked why I never saw him. She told me that he tried to be my friend, but I hurt him. So he stopped seeing me. She said he was mad at me. I was kinda scared he was mad at me, and now I know I should have been. I have one more story after this one because we moved out shortly after. Alright, this is the last story I have of that house. It's also the one that bothers me the most. By this time I was 8, I had thrown away my yellow rabbit after I left kindergarten. I stopped playing with most of my toys, I didn't trust them anymore. I hadn't seen anything out of the ordinary for the past 3 years, unlike my sister and father. By this time, I thought I made up the whole experience. So I started playing with toys again. I moved on to action figures. My favorite now was my Wolverine toy. One day in the afternoon I was left alone at home for the first time. It was during the summer, I think. Anyway, I was sitting on the floor of my room playing with Wolverine. We had recently installed tile floor, so I sat on a sheet. Lately my floor had been cold, so I started putting it down. I played rough with my toys at that time. Who didn't, right? Broke a lot of them, and that day I broke Wolverine. I twisted his head around, and it had gotten stuck. I frowned at this, sad I had broken my favorite toy. Suddenly, the head turned back to normal. And I heard from behind me.
"Fixed it, friend."
I screamed and threw the damn thing against the wall.
I was hoping you wouldn't do that this time, Anon.
Freaked out, and tried to run out of my room. But my foot got caught in the sheet and I tripped. I was scrambling to get up, all the while I got more tangled in the sheet until I was completely bound by it.
It wasn't nice to throw me, you know. Why couldn't I be your friend?
I started to cry. I wanted to apologize. He wouldn't have it. The last thing I remember was my face being covered by the sheet, suffocating me. I struggled, but eventually, I passed out from exhaustion. I was woken up by my parents. I was in my bed. They thought I was just tired from playing and passed out. I thought about telling them what happened, but I was afraid my dad would beat me. He was still afraid of whatever was in my house. I told my sister what happened. I guess she had started seeing less and less of Big Head, but he kept talking about me. He was saying that he wanted to try and be my friend one more time. After the sheet incident, he talked to her one last time. He said that I would never be his friend, and he wasn't mad anymore. Only sad. We moved out of the house a few months later into an apartment. My parents couldn't keep up with the mortgage, I guess. And though I moved to a worse neighborhood, I felt safer. The only things I heard at night were children screaming and the occasional gunshot, but I was fine with that, because they were out there, and I was inside.